Good evening, and welcome to tonight's special episode of Prince Hall Think Tank, which is a monthly show where we talk about various topics related to Prince Hall Masonry. My name is Brother Dave Gillarm, and I'll be your host tonight. I'm a proud past master of Mount Pisgah Lodge number 53, which operates in Columbus, Georgia, where Christopher Gaines serves our worshipful master. And I also have the pleasure of serving as the worshipful grand historian of Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, where the Honorable Corey Shackelford Sr. serves our Most Worshipful Grand Master. Tonight's episode, we would talk about Prince Hall Freemasonry's response to the coronavirus. And as always, the views and opinions that are expressed by me and Damian Jack tonight, not necessarily express the views and opinions of the Grand Lodges in which we hold membership. So now we're going to go ahead and let Brother Jack introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. Brother Damian Jack, proud past master of Paul Drayton Lodge number 7 in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Brother Lonnie McBride serves as our worshipful master. Our lodge operates under the auspices of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of North Carolina, where the Honorable Daniel L. D.T. Thompson serves as our 24th Most Worshipful Grand Master. It's an honor and pleasure, as always, to be with you on the Prince Hall Think Tank, especially on this special episode where we're talking about this pandemic and how it is affecting us in the world today.
Thank you for that, Brother Jack. And now we will have Most Worshipful Christy introduce himself.
Sir. Good evening, brothers.
Good evening.
It is truly my privilege to join you this evening. I am a proud past master of St. Mark's Lodge in 7, Columbus, Ohio. And by the grace of God and the will of the craft, I'm privileged to serve as the 64th Most Worshipful Grand Master, the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the great state of Ohio. Truly is a privilege to be with you this evening, to join with my dear friend and brother, Most Worshipful Brother Corey Shackelford.
Pleasure.
All right, and lastly, we have Most Worshipful Shackelford Sr.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, sir.
First off, I do want to give the honor and respect to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who is the head of my life. I am Brother Corey Shackelford Sr., where I humbly hail. I'm from Foundation Lodge number 592 in the jurisdiction of Georgia and the John Quill city of Smyrna, where my worshipful master is Raymond McDonald. As with my peer, my most worshipful conservator, I have the honor and the privilege to serve as the 18th Most Worshipful Grand Master for the jurisdiction of Georgia, and which is a position I do not take very lightly. It's a privilege, and I'm honored to be able to serve in that capacity to move this jurisdiction and to serve Prince Hall Masonry as a conservator for Freemasonry in the jurisdiction of Georgia.
All right, thank you for that, Grandmaster. And as stated in the beginning, purpose of our show was talk about what's going on between various Prince Hall Grand Lodges or parish jurisdictions during this pandemic. Um, During this time, most of our lodges haven't been meeting, and there's been an importance or urgency to have some type of communication with your lodge members. So to cover that portion, we would have Most Worshipful Chester Christie tell us what they've been doing in the jurisdiction of Ohio regarding how to keep members in contact with each other.
Brother Gilliam, thank you so much for the opportunity. Let me first start with just a little bit of background in terms of how we got here. Our governor, the Honorable Michael DeWine, initially issued a ban on mass gatherings of up to 100 participants in any one setting. That was revised sometime in April to limit groups or gatherings of at least 10. So 10 or fewer obviously eliminated our ability to convene in person for lodge meetings. Given that, our trustees met, and as it turns out, we've been meeting twice a month as a group of trustees since approximately 2017. So the concept of a virtual meetings obviously was nothing strange to us. We got together and said, given the fact that we can't convene and meet, what's the most logical thing that we should do in an effort to try to make sure the lodges continue to meet. We thought, given the span of generations in most of our lodges, one of the easiest ways to do this would be something that would be accessible to most persons, would be through freeconferencecall.com. We have a number of other brothers in a lot of other lodges that were a little bit more technologically sufficient or proficient, and we thought using Zoom or other mediums like that would also be a decent option. So, for all intents and purposes, we got trustees together. We're able to design a template for the actual meeting criteria, as well as a template agenda for both the stated meetings and, to a lesser extent, for our work meetings. Subsequent to that, we brought together all of our deputy district grand lecturers. We were able to bring our administrative officers together, work out the protocols for the meeting, the do's and don'ts, the appropriate etiquette for conference calls, basic things, keeping calls on mute when you're not being identified, some things that we specifically didn't want brothers doing. Obviously, not having the normal ritualistic opening, we did basic things like being able to open with prayer, have a roll call of officers, seek and distress, a lot of the other basic agenda. All of this was adopted, and then ultimately we brought all the worshipful masters from the jurisdiction together on one mass conference call, along with the deputies, went over the process, went over the protocol, and essentially then issued a directive empowering them to work in that capacity. From that point forward, we've been meeting since the 1st of April, twice a month on their regular stated meetings, as well as for their work nights. The why has a number of different components. First of all, I think that continuity of meetings, at least from my standpoint, is somewhat analogous to like a gym membership. And you'll excuse the analogy, but I'm certainly not trying to equate Masonic communications with gym membership. But if you think about it, your gym membership enables you to be physically healthy. It enables you to maintain some level of emotional stability. It keeps your mental health in check, allows you to be stress-free, keeps you fit in general. It enables you to maintain a type of routine and a structure. Gym membership allows you to come together with people with common interests and do something that you might not be able to do on your own, or that you might not have essentially the discipline to continue to maintain by yourself. Well, I think us meeting virtually has the same type of impact. This enables us, one, to continue to reach out and stay in contact with the brother. It enables us to lift each other up in prayer. We can determine what the needs are of all of the members of the craft. It enables us to identify and clearly address, to the extent we can, the needs of those who are sick and shut in. More importantly, this has proven to be a venue where a number of brothers, many of whom have been sick and shut in for some time, they may not be able to go to lodge meetings because they're not able to drive at night. They're not able to ascend the steps that lead you into the lodge hall. For any number of reasons, they may not have been participating for months, weeks, years. But now, by virtue of just being able to pick up the phone and call in, there's the opportunity to bring in those brethren that we've not been able to meet with in person, and to have them feel that they are an active and vibrant part of the participation in the lodge. Most importantly, though, I think it enables us simply to maintain that contact, because the last thing in the world we want to do is to cease our Masonic communication. First, we're not able to meet with each other. We can't physically hug one another. We may not be there in person, but in forums like this, we can see one another. Certainly by phone, we can hear each other's voices. We can talk to each other, and we can continue that Masonic fellowship. In addition to that, we can maintain the business of the lodge. We continue to handle routine and basic things that keep the lodge functioning and going forward from an administrative standpoint. We're also able to address the some aspects of the ritualistic work, at least to the extent that degree teams are able to come together. They're able to go over the work and do the kinds of things that solidify the ritual, the monitor in their minds, and prepares them even more so for when they go back to actually performing degree work. One of the other, I think, important things out of all of this is it enables continuity. Brothers are still able to maintain contact with and reach out to existing candidates. We may not be able to actually do the ritualistic work, but nonetheless, we can engage them and stay in touch. And that's obviously pretty critically important. This is obviously something that has been seen initially as a negative because it impacts our ability to meet in person. But the positive that's come out of this, obviously, is that we've actually brought brothers to the front, so to speak, in their ability to contact or to connect with us and make sure that they're in touch with and doing the business they need to with the lodge. And I'm especially alluding to those brothers who are sick and shut in and simply unable, in most instances, to attend. The one thing that's come out of this is more than likely we will be, even after we're able to meet again in person, many of the lodges plan on having this type of virtual meeting, at least on a quarterly basis, if not more frequently, just to do an outreach to all of the members of the lodge, especially to include those who can't come out to regular meetings. And to do this as a source of checking in, a source of outreach to those brothers, a way of us being able to check on our widows, etc. And so it's something that we hopefully will incorporate in our regular routine going forward. That's the beauty of being able to meet virtually, and we found that it has been a tremendous source of maintaining that brotherhood and that fellowship and keeping the fraternal bond strong. We have 47 lodges in our jurisdiction, and I've had the privilege of being on 27 meetings so far and counting since the 1st of April. I've made it a point to try to be on as many of the meetings as possible. Obviously, many of the lodges meet on the same night, so but I can't do the first meeting. I'll do on the third night, etc. We're trying to get them all done between now and preferably by the end of May. It's been a tremendous experience. Brothers have been appreciative of it, and we're looking forward to being able to come together again and meet in person. But in the interim, it enables us to take care of the business of the lodge and still maintain the bonds of friendship and Masonic fellowship. It's been very, very good. After affording Most Worshipful Brother Shackelford an opportunity to share what he's going to share, if we have time remaining, I would like to take a minute or two and share some of the things that the brothers have been able to do, because they, in addition to what I've just shared, brothers have met, many of their committees have continued to meet, so that there are a number of the community service related projects that have already been on the trestle board, they're able to do, but doing it in a manner that is kind of respects the protocols of social distancing and so forth. And there are a couple in particular that I think are worth mentioning and talking about briefly. So I'll do that with your permission, but I also look forward, Reverend Shaka, for an opportunity to get a word in edgewise. Come back when that opportunity is appropriate.
All right, thank you for that, Most Worshipful Christy, and that was definitely insightful for me. I had never heard any other jurisdiction do anything like that to that magnitude,
Yes,
and that's definitely progressive in my opinion. Now for Most Worshipful Shackelford, you're part of a long line of Grand Masters that have always been heavily involved in the community. And our Grand Lodge in particular, since 1870, has always been involved in some aspects in the community. So during this pandemic, what has the jurisdiction of Georgia been, what you and the jurisdiction of Georgia been doing during this pandemic?
That's an excellent question, Past Master Gillum. But before I entertain that question, I would like to pivot and pay some humble respects to the membership in the jurisdiction of Georgia, but more especially the leadership that we have in Georgia collectively. First and foremost, I do want to acknowledge our grand worthy matron, Sister Deirdre Parks Wilson, for her continued support of my vision and endeavors for the jurisdiction of Georgia. And of course, to my state head of houses, starting with our Scottish Rite side of the house, Deputy Primus James, who you all know also serves as the Right Worshipful Deputy Grand Master for the jurisdiction of Georgia. And then our concordant bodies on the York Rite side, our Grand High Priest Vernon Hall, our Grand Thrice Illustrious Master Earl Lyons, and our Grand Excellent Grand Commander, Eminent Grand Commander Edward Russell, and Freddie Grissom, the president of the Priory in the state of Georgia. Prior to moving in this direction on top of March, and not to be redundant with some of the things that most worshipers has already stated, I had an emergency call meeting before this thing just took flight with this pandemic, with all the state heads of houses, to allow them and let them know the actions that I was planning to take to, one, protect the jurisdiction of Georgia, but more especially its members. When President Donald Trump declared a national emergency as it related to COVID-19. With that, I put out information to cease and desist with any lodge meetings, chapter meetings, events of any nature, with an effort to protect the membership. Membership being the first and foremost of my importance on that priority list outside of our kids. But during this pandemic, I thought it was paramount to make sure none of our membership was put in harm's way with our usual endeavors, but what we do out in the community, locally within the lodges and chapters, and of course, jurisdictional wise, with the Grand Lodge in that aspect. And to that point, things have been extremely successful in that aspect where our membership has not been put in harm's way. And before I move into that question, I gotta do this because I know they are watching. So Corey Jr., Evan, Daddy love you. And I think y'all that know me, y'all know how I feel about my boys. So I know they've already pinged me a couple of times on the text message saying, "Hi, Daddy, we see you." So I don't see you, but I love you. So I had to put that out there and let them know that, especially with Father's Day just coming up in the next month in June. But for the jurisdiction of Georgia, as I indicated, I wanted a cease and desist order for all events to protect our membership. However, as late as last month, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, we partner with the city of South Fulton, where our Grand East resides. Like with most jurisdictions, our Grand East is sitting idle. And we're blessed in Georgia to have a large property that sits out on Old National Road. And I just thought it would be robbery to have a building of that magnitude to be sitting there empty. So we partnered with the city of South Fulton and was able to do a joint venture on behalf of the Grand Lodge and the Masons and Eastern Stars in the jurisdiction of Georgia to do a food giveaway down in that side of town, in that south portion of Atlanta. And I tell you, it was a major, major success. 1,000+ families came out and got fed. It was done in a drive-by situation. And what I mean by drive-by situation, you drive in, you get your goods, and you keep moving, so that everyone could support the protocol that has been put in place with trying to shorten this pandemic by social distancing and all that aspect. And some of you are familiar. I did post it on my social media page to show what the jurisdiction of Georgia is doing, so that when history is written, they will understand that Prince Hall Masonry and Eastern Stars in Georgia, we did our part and continuing to do our part. We're trying to assist with serving the community as a whole. And as I've shared with many of the membership in my jurisdiction, when the Grand Lodge represents, the Grand Lodge represents for the entire jurisdiction. That includes lodges and chapters. And now just recently, coming up this month on May 20th, we are partnering with the American Red Cross. And if many of you are hearing, which they rarely talk about it on the news media, there is a shortage of blood in the United States. So we had some of the representatives from the Red Cross reach out. And once again, we have a beautiful blessing out there on 75040 Old National, which is our grandees. So I partnered with them on behalf of the jurisdiction of Georgia to host a blood drive at the grandees to assist the Red Cross with trying to secure as much blood as they possibly can for those that are in need for it at this time. So those are the major things that we have going on right now in Georgia. And the goal is until we're able to formally meet again, physically meet again, every month the jurisdiction of Georgia will tie in with some entity to give back to the community in that particular aspect. And again, everything we do from the top down represents the jurisdiction of Georgia, and not just the jurisdiction of Georgia, but Prince Hall Masonry across the board, because everyone sees that, so that we won't sit idle during this time, and we're doing our part. And like I shared with some, I've seen a lot of things out there on social media about these don't rush challenges. My thing is to them, challenge to get out there in the community, not about showing yourselves off, but what you can do for someone who's in need. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, regardless of what organization you belong to. It's about serving the community and not serving ourselves in those particular aspects. So those things I think I can speak on, since I do serve and participate in several different organizations. But I see what we're doing as Prince Hall Masons, and I salute everyone across the country with doing their particular part as it relates to that. And just one last piece to touch on with regards to the closure of meetings. As most worshipful stated, in Georgia also, we're very big on technology in this jurisdiction. So when that cease and disorder came, the focus was utilize technology to the best of your ability. And since the top of March, we've been having across the jurisdiction, chapters and lodges and even concordant houses are having virtual meetings using the technology that most worshipers already stated, Zoom, uh, conference calls, things of that nature. And it has been an overwhelming success. And like he stated, we've been able to pull the lost sheep in, if you will, to get them on those Zoom calls and those conference calls, again, to let them know, hey, we're still with you. We miss you. Although we all know that is in this thing that we call Freemasonry, we love to embrace and fellowship in the physical sense. But in this case, during this pandemic, it's a virtual thing until we're able to do those things that we once done before or get back to a sense of normalcy, and to be able to physically meet while practicing the protocols in place when that time comes for the jurisdiction of Georgia. So that's what we're doing right now, David, as more things are coming down the pipe. And let me also add this. I've had many of our members call and stated where they've donated funds out of their own pockets, lodges, and chapters to assist families in those areas, more especially those who are heart-stricken by being out of work. And so they're doing things to be able to make good for those in their immediate community that have acknowledged and shown that, hey, we can use some help here. So I do want to give kudos to the members of the jurisdiction on their part on that local level, and in other words, of paying it forward.
Thank you for that, most worshipful. And before we go back to most worshipful Christy, there was something else that you did with the pay it forward. So, like, what inspired you to do stuff like that?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, Dave. The jurisdiction of Georgia, we're blessed, and I don't take that lightly. Our membership does a great job with what they do, and most times when I sit and watch what's happening, and when a blessing comes, how I look at it sometimes, if I didn't have it from the start, I'm not going to miss it during the middle of it. So I did do something a couple of weeks ago where I put a challenge out there, if you will, and said the first 15 that reach out to me, I'm going to take care of your lunch. And I tell you, before I can hit the enter key or at least take my hands off the keyboard, my inbox is filled with handles with the lunch. And I honored that request. But the most beautiful part about that was I was getting back channel messages saying, Grandmaster, what can I do to help? Give me your cash app number. Let me cash app you some money so that you can be able to assist others. So I only had a limit of 15 people, but we ended up feeding granting lunches for those essential works for about 25 to 30 people right off the fly. And I tell you, that just goes to show you how we come together as a people. And it's amazing when times are like these, when some are struggling and some not, ready to extend that right hand of fellowship, but more especially that charity to assist those in need when the call comes. So appreciate you throwing that one out, Dave. But sometimes some things are not even needed, but I'm glad to be able to be a blessing to someone in that aspect.
And I believe that's a beautiful thing that you did, because not only that, there were a lot of brothers and sisters who actually followed your example and did the same thing. So it kind of made it, go viral, where you had plenty of brothers and sisters all across the country who did the same thing to support those who are essential workers who are out there on the front lines. So I definitely want to say to you and to the brothers and sisters who have been a blessing, thank you very much for just for coming up, for actually listening to the spirit that came to you to actually do that, and bless those who are definitely in need of a blessing. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If I can take it just a minute or two and just build on that a little bit. It's amazing that what I've heard from most work from Shackelford, because in the jurisdiction of Ohio, we can proudly say that our dedicated and hardworking members of the craft have been similarly engaged. Virtually all of our lives, all of the districts, at one time or another since the beginning of the pandemic, have been involved with what we called initially a pizza challenge. It started out with a small lodge down in a former capital of the state, in Chillicothe. It's a relatively small and somewhat rural part of the state. The bottom line, brothers in a relatively small lodge there decided that they wanted to order pizza, wings, etc., for two of the local firehouses, and did so. Then they put out a challenge that for all of the other lodges that were able to do something of a similar nature. As it turns out, many of the lodges already had planned on doing so anyhow. The challenge was just kind of a fun way to replicate that same type of benevolence. So now we have lodges throughout the jurisdiction that are providing pizza, wings, sandwiches, other kinds of food, lunchtime and other times for first responders, firefighters, paramedics, doctors and nurses. We've had a group of brothers out of the Cleveland area feed nurses and doctors on the COVID unit at Cleveland Clinic. Fortunately, they did it in a way that was safe and where they didn't violate any social distancing issues, but they were able to have that delivered to those individuals on that particular ward. Along those same lines, we've had brothers in a variety of our different lodges have volunteered to assist those who are already involved in Meals on Wheels. Obviously, since the pandemic, there's been a far greater need for home delivery of meals to sick and shut-ins, to seniors, etc. And we've had brothers literally volunteering their time to assist those who are already engaged in meal delivery on Meals on Wheels. Something that's a little bit unique. We had our primary election was postponed until the 28th of April. It was originally supposed to happen on the very same day that our governor ordered a shelter in place. So, long story short, we had brothers come together and set up distribution and collection sites for absentee ballots, and it went throughout the community as often as they could to ensure that we were getting the ballots distributed, getting them back in a timely fashion, so that our voter awareness and education committee was on the job in terms of making sure that the level of participation, particularly in our community, was in no way diminished by the fact that we were no longer able to vote in person. But it was unique and a very different way of doing it, but a great contribution. I want to emphasize for a minute something that was done or initiated by our grand physician, Dr. C. Keith Melvin. Dr. Melvin operates out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And he partnered with the pastor of one of our churches down in the Cincinnati area, very, very progressive church. And they're very committed to and connected to the community. And both of them got together with Mercy Health Systems in Cincinnati. And they created a drive-through COVID-19 test site where they would administering the tests at no charge and averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 a day. And they intentionally set it up in an area called Bond Hill, which is a predominantly African-American community in the Cincinnati area. And it's covered through local media and the like. The point is, you had Brother Keith Melvin with assistance from a number of the members of the craft, actually providing a service that may not have been available elsewhere throughout the community, and directly impacting those of our community that are in need. His focus was primarily on those who had compromised immune systems that may have been otherwise incapable of being able to get the test on their own. People who were symptomatic, pregnant women, those who were most desperately in need of determining whether or not they were positive for the virus. And I thought that was just an amazing partnership and something that was of great value and really enabled us to show our light as Master Masons in the jurisdiction of Ohio. We've had a number of other things that have been initiated. We had brothers who were working with our local public school systems to distribute laptops. Many of the students, in order for their lesson plans and the other aspects of their curriculum while they were at home to be provided to them, they didn't have computers at home. So arrangements were made to have a number of notebooks distributed on a temporary basis to them, but they had to get to the students. Many of them didn't have their own transportation. Their parents didn't have cars. So we had many of the brothers to volunteer and get involved with that distribution process. We have one of our lodges in Cleveland, Ohio area. It's WMT Boyd Lodge number 79, in collaboration with their sister chapter, Wisdom chapter, have a food bank. And very, very similar to what Most Worshipful Shackelford had described. It was done. They normally have their food distribution on, I think, the third Friday of every month. But this needed to be done drive-by style. So literally, boxes were prepared, set up right outside of the vehicles. As the car pulled up, brothers were there to load them in the trunk, keep it moving. But it was tremendous because obviously, food pantries and other food distribution sources have been hit. And the need is great. The need is tremendous, and that's our responsibility as Master Masons. And I'm proud of our jurisdiction for how, in spite of the limitations that have been placed on us by the pandemic, we're still stepping up and taking care of what we need to in support of members of our community, as we should, as Master Masons and as Prince Hall Masons in particular. So it's been absolutely fantastic, and I commend the brethren for their dedication, their commitment to those principles of Masonry. So we wanted to share just a couple of those stories. There are probably a laundry list of other outreach and community service things that we could talk about here, but time is obviously limited. But I'm proud of the work that's been done in our jurisdiction, and I thank all of the brothers, not just the Grand Lodge, but it's also all of our pendant concordant bodies that have also been working, many of whom have also been meeting virtually as well. It's been a tremendous experience thus far.
Thank you for that, most worshipful Christy. And I think it's becoming apparent that even though we have a pandemic and many things are shut down, Prince Hall Masonry is still very much alive and well. So before we get to questions, most work for Shackelford, if you had to say something to brothers or sisters to inspire them to get back into the community during this pandemic, what would it be?
Well, that's an excellent question there, Dave. But let me say this as it relates to the membership in Georgia. And actually, I can only speak for Georgia because I'm well aware of the impact of what this pandemic is doing to our membership, and more especially to our essential workers that are out there. And they definitely need to be highlighted, recognized,
Yes.
kudos, whatever that can be done for them now, during this process, and at the end, as we relate to our first responders, grocery store chain workers, the cashiers at your grocery stores, your truck drivers, your doctors, your medical officials, and most especially, I think today is, and from what I've understood and seen on the news, that today is Nurses Appreciation Day. So definitely a big salute to all the nurses across the country within the Prince Hall family. And
Yes.
of course, y'all know it's a sad frog that doesn't praise its own pun. So most definitely to all the nurses in the jurisdiction of Georgia across the board, I salute you coming from the office of Most Worshipful Grand Master for you doing what you're doing and putting yourselves in harm's way to protect the community and those that we love, and also to those family members, and not those even connected with the order that have been impacted and lost relatives directly or indirectly to this pandemic. My personal prayers goes to all of you, and the prayers and from on behalf of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, because I do know we have been impacted with some of our membership COVID-19 where they have succumbed to it. So in saying that. But Dave, to answer your question as it relates to the membership and getting them out there, I do want to say this. Like I said, I am aware what's going on, and I made a very big and tough decision, but a needed decision to our membership, because I know every organization needs funds to run and to operate. And I think we all can agree on that. But understanding the compassion that's needed, and for your membership to understand that we are always and will be in touch with our membership when things like this happen. And as you can see, the job rate with unemployment is in the millions now. So in the jurisdiction of Georgia, to be able to take care of our membership to a point, I waived a large portion of our annual fees that come to the Grand Lodge, roughly about 70% of those annual fees, to assist the membership, but more especially to assist those who have been stricken uh, with hardship with finances from being out of work or whatnot. And it was just a way to give back, to let the membership know we know it's about business at given time, but it's also about heart. It's also about brotherly love. It's also about charity. And we always say charity starts where? At home first. And that was something I definitely wanted to do for the jurisdiction of Georgia, to let them know that we hear you, I see you, and we love you. And that's why we moved in that direction. Now, as it relates to our membership, assisting locally on a community service level, again, as I indicated earlier, the focus with the cease and desist from events of all sorts of meeting was to protect our membership when they're out there, because God forbids anyone become infected with this virus with something that we were doing out there in the community. It's a big hit. Now, I've been thinking lately and watching to see there may be some things I may look at down the road to lessen that load, or remove that restriction, to give our lodges and chapters a more greater opportunity to be able to get out there and assist, but at the same time adhering to and respecting the protocols that government has put out in play with social distancing and protecting themselves in that aspect. So I'm praying on that in that aspect. But as I indicated at the top of the show, in this case and during this time when the Grand Lodge is functioning at the level of doing community service work, it's the entire jurisdiction. It's the membership as a whole. I'd rather put myself in harm's way instead of my membership to give back to the community in that aspect. So right now, that's where we are until things do get better. And like Mayor Bottoms in Atlanta says, she's going to pay attention to the data, and I'm going to do the same thing as it relates to the jurisdiction of Georgia before putting out people out there in harm's way.
Thank you for that, Grandmaster. I guess now we will get into a couple of viewer questions. Um, hopefully I pronounced his name correct. This comes from brother Joshua Feliciano, I believe from the great state of New York. And he asks, do you think this pandemic has forced Freemasonry to evolve by incorporating technology into the lodge?
I think it's readily apparent from the responses that we've already provided that that's the case. Uh, Technology has proven to be the lifeblood of how we're functioning currently and how we're able to continue to meet. So, without a shadow of a doubt, we are now, someone may argue, we've been forced to do it, but by whatever means, we're availing ourselves of the technology that's there and utilizing it to the benefit of Prince Hall Masonry.
And in conjunction with that, Dave, that was a great question asked about the brother. And honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, it's just funny how God operates and how he works. Just think if the pandemic didn't come, would we be pushing technology the way we're doing it right now?
Right.
Because we all know masonry is that old brick and mortar.
Right.
We're hinged on customs and traditions. And it takes an act of God sometimes to push us for those that don't want to move to the next stage of life. And that next stage of life is technology, not just in Freemasonry, but across the board. I mean, when you look at the millennials, I mean, that's all they do. When you look at Generation X, we were the bridge to it. And then when you look at our baby boomers, they're looking at us like stand back as crazy. Some still using a flip phone here and there to make it happen, but they are coming on board with it. So it is a twofold, if you will, to move to technology and to utilize technology to the best of our ability. And I do think once this pandemic is over, which it will be soon, I pray to God for that we'll even embrace technology even more so to the point that like we know it can help us move to the next level to be able to handle business, to be able to communicate strong with one another, and want to save a lot of time and money by doing what we're doing right now. And we're saving so much. I can honestly say I probably filled my car one time this month
Right.
due to technology by doing Zoom meetings and things along those lines. And the only time I've had to put gas in when I had to make those essential trips to Walmart to get things for the house. But I do think this will allow jurisdictions across the board to put a little more emphasis on their technology departments going forward, to let them know and recognize that technology is going to be the key to help us move forward. And like I say, we're jumping in feet first with this thing now, and some are being forced to it because if you still want to operate during this pandemic, you're going to have to embrace it and embrace it with full arms wrapped around it.
In addition to that, one additional quick thought. This may also enable us to be a little bit more comfortable with technology to the point where it'll change not only how we communicate with each other, but how we communicate outside of Masonry as well.
Absolutely.
And it may begin to enable us to think about ways that we can better utilize social media, etc. But to do so in a thoughtful and effective way that doesn't in any way preclude us from maintaining all the tenets and all the other beliefs that we have as Prince Hall Masons. Hopefully, it'll enable us to gain a greater comfort level, especially many of our other members that have shunned technology for many years. Hopefully, it opens up the thinking.
Absolutely. One of the questions that that I have, and it's definitely easy to discuss how this pandemic affected us negatively. As we talked about of course, the lives that have been lost, and of course how basically our lives have been on a standstill for those who are not essential workers. How many of us are out of work, and those who are trying to find where they're going to find their next meal and pay their bills, so on and so forth. But I've always been an advocate of Most Worshipful Shackelford's theme, which has been his theme for a long time, but God.
Amen.
So, as we talk about, this pandemic is taking place, but God. So my question to you both is, what have you seen as the silver lining, so to speak, as this pandemic is occurring and as we, have been staying at home? What have you seen? I know Most Worshipful Christy has briefly talked about it has helped older seasoned members who can't get out to attend meetings. But what are some positive things that you have seen come out of this situation?
Well, on my end, I can honestly say that with the number of phone calls, text messages, emails that I've gotten from our membership across the jurisdiction, it honestly, it humbles you for one. And number two, it makes you respect what we have even more so because you missed that fellowship with one another. To be able to get out once a month or twice a month to go to a meeting or to go to a social or go to a community service event and to be able to fellowship with your membership. And I've seen the family come stronger. My phone doesn't stop ringing with brothers and sisters and even most worship my fellow conservatives reaching out saying, "Hey, I'm just calling to check on you. I'm just calling to see how you and the boys are doing." And a lot of those things were not happening prior to this pandemic. Now they were happening, don't get me wrong, but not at the rate that is happening now. And I truly hope from an individual standpoint and from a internal standpoint that it will wake us up just as a people, as a human race, to let you know that, hey, God is trying to tell us something. And he's waking us up in a very strong kind of way, and he's doing it the way he wants to do it. And now we have to adapt to that, and we're adapting to it. And as I indicated earlier, I do know in my heart that with the technology that's out there now and the testing that these professionals are doing, that we will get past this, but we will also remember this. And as one of the great Bible verses say, and I know we've all heard it before, peace be still. And that was his way of letting us know, I need y'all to take a break. I need you to exhale. I need you to slow down and not just smell the roses, but enjoy those roses when you're smelling them at the same time. So I do see a great silver lining down the road from it. I do see the camaraderie, the craft, the and even other organizations being more stronger working together behind all this because it's a wake up call for us. It's a wake up call in light of everything that's going on. And like most worshipers stated, from a technology standpoint, it is definitely awakening us in that aspect for those who are not utilizing it to the point to where they can see like, hey, this can really work. And I'll give you a fine example before I transition to most worshipful. I've been working from home since the top of March. And a lot of businesses realize that don't allow people to work from home, that business can still do what? Get handled. And I've actually gotten used to it. I'm enjoying it. I'm hating to go back when I have to go back in June. But business is the business. But it just goes to show you that a lot of different things are going to change in this and how we do business in this world due to some of the aftermath coming from the pandemic that's causing everything to shift in that aspect. And it's going to allow us to start thinking more like, should something like this happen again down the road, I personally need to be more prepared. Uh, in case it happens, put money away, have other streams of resources coming in, and not just rely on one particular job or whatever the case may be to provide for your families and things. So it's definitely an eye-waking experience for everyone in that aspect to say, I got to be prepared so that I don't get caught, if you will, slipping the next time something of this nature comes up. Because President Obama, he warned us 10 years ago that it was coming.
That's right.
And as a country, we slept on it, but at the same time, now we're pressing the gas to try to catch up with this thing and get it behind us. So that's my feedback to you on that one, Past Master Jack.
Past Master Jack, I agree wholeheartedly. I won't repeat most work with Shackelford's comments, but essentially I agree wholeheartedly that it has clearly brought us closer together. Some of the conversations I've had with brothers and many of our members of the OES, there are, for example, some past grant-worthy matrons and patrons and past grand masters that maybe hadn't heard from the craft on a regular basis in some period of time. Maybe they're not able to get out anymore. One or two may even be in care facilities. But we've been able to reach out to them just to say, how are you doing? Checking up on you, checking up on your family, etc. And that's happening at the local lodge level, at the Grand Lodge level, at the local chapter level, and at Amaranth Grand chapter level. There's more and more and more of that happening, and I pray that becomes a normal way of life for us going forward. In addition to that, I think the simplest way I can put it is God has a way of being able to, in no uncertain terms, make sure that we're aware of who's in charge. And in this particular instance, he's made it abundantly clear that those of us who think that we are operating out of our own strength and the things that we do successfully or that are beneficial to those who we serve are being done because of our greatness, guess what? Got another story for you. And he just told us that he's made us dependent upon him and knowing that he is the source. So if nothing else, this pandemic has put things back in perspective and enable us to humble ourselves and understand who's running things.
Be still and know that I am God. Psalms 46:10.
Yes, it is.
Sir. Yes, sir.
All right. And have another question. I guess this is more like how this is handled in your jurisdictions. Comes from Brother C.J. Raymond from the Pelican State. Yes. Are there any plans to give Masonic rites to any brothers that passed during COVID-19, but couldn't get their rites at the funeral due to social distancing guidelines?
Past Master Gilman, I entertained Brother Raymond's question. That was a very big one for us in Georgia. And again, like most jurisdictions, we're all moving in uncharted territory or should I say uncharted waters when it comes to this. And that one took a great deal of prayer for me on my end to ensure that a brother and or a sister receive their last right, because that's one thing we've always been taught is to bury our dead when the time comes. But again, even the great historians and the great writers of Freemasonry never even thought about what happens in the age of a pandemic when you can't physically get out there and do what you need to do. So decisions need to be made on those leaderships or those in leadership during those times when pandemics like these arise. In Georgia, what I implemented across the board was that, again, to adhere to the protocols in place with social distancing and what federal and state and local governments have put in place, but more especially, believe it or not, funeral homes. Those are the ones that have really been tight with it, was the fact that since we couldn't come out in numbers as we do when we have a fallen soldier or bonus, to present that family with the resolution of respect at that given time at the funeral, or should they have a wait to have that to them at that time and the membership not collaborate as a whole to respect, again, those protocols put in order. But at the same time, as I've expressed to a number of our working masters, worthy matrons, and the leadership in the jurisdiction of Georgia, that when this is over, go back and give that brother and or that sister their just due, because they're entitled to it. They're entitled to it. Go back and give them their just due with the family's permission to let them know, hey, we know they couldn't get it like they should have gotten it, but we're still here to serve you and this family. Because one of our biggest responsibilities as Masons is to take care of our widows and orphans. And part of that responsibility is making sure that that fallen soldier and sister do receive those last rites as they should, and in conjunction with what we do as in Freemasonry and Prince Hall Masons and Eastern Stars. So in Georgia, that's the process that we're taking right now until this thing is behind us. But to show that love to the family that, hey, we are here still, and when that time does come, to go back and give them their final right in the proper manner that we do as Masons and Eastern Stars.
Thank you for that, sir.
I couldn't tell whether most were completed or not. The frame froze. Exactly the same response on this end. It's strictly a matter of having the permission and respecting the desires of the family. To the extent that we're able to do so and the family permits it, that's our intent as well.
All right, thank you for that. Another question. I don't know if you all be able to cover this or not. This comes from brother Frank Kisner. Hopefully I pronounced his name right.
You did. You did.
Yeah. Does the Council of Grandmasters have any input on the current situation, on today's current situation with the pandemic? And it's kind of interesting because we intended to have the president of the Council of Grandmasters on, but I believe he has a lot of stuff going on right now, so he wasn't able to do it. But I don't know if you all can answer this or not.
I'll yield the floor to most worshipful first.
I'm good to go, sir. Honestly, I don't have an answer because I'm not sure the extent to which the Conference of Grandmasters has established any particular protocols that they have attempted to recommend for implementation across the board. In light of the sovereignty of all of our jurisdictions, I think that for the most part, each jurisdiction has designed its own response, its own set of protocols for how to manage best in the pandemic. And thus far, we're operating very effectively following those designs.
And with that, I echo most worshipful on his comments with that. And it's funny that question was even asked, because we would have all been preparing ourselves for the Conference of Grandmasters come early next week to head to Boston. But I do want to give credit and respect to the leadership for the conference for having the wisdom and the foresight early on to say, hey, we may not be able to do this thing in light of everything that's going on. So to our president, past Grandmaster Dorian out of New York, and
Yes.
the vice president, Philip David, out of DC, I salute you guys for having the confidence and the wisdom to make that call that far out to protect the membership across the board when we come to the conference. So, but as it relates to protocol or anything that the conference has in place, Dave, I will yield that to our president Dorian Glover to make those comments at a date and time.
Yeah.
Quick shout out to my classmate as well. Brother President has done a phenomenal job. Thank him for his leadership.
Absolutely. Quick question. With going into that, we know that we have different conventions, such as a Conference of Grandmasters that have had to cancel due to the pandemic. In the event, and we know, talking earlier about this situation not being prepared or things like that. Looking at the business aspect of the organization in the event, with lodges and grand lodges, taking place. How do you look at the movement of officers? With elections should be taking place, and certain officers, maybe moving up or moving out of the way. Have you thought about, like contingency plans or, moving things back, or how, elections should or should happen, especially now since, like you said, we're forced to be in this age of technologies. Has there been any talk of how you would move forward in that form of fashion?
Who you want to entertain first? I'm sorry.
Most worshipful Christy, you could start first, sir.
Sorry, did you say? It had a freeze frame again. Who did he ask?
Okay. What I asked was basically.
I didn't know who you asked to respond.
Oh, I said you, sir. You could go first.
That's fine. Two thoughts. First of all, absolutely, there's been significant discussion about how best to address Grand Session, any of the elections that may have been scheduled to occur during our Grand Communication. Fortunately for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio, this is the first year of my administration, so our actual full-fledged elections would actually occur in 2021. However, we thought it necessary to have further dialogue on a contingency plan for how we may be able to investigate doing much of what we would do with Grand Communication virtually. So nothing's been finalized at this point, but we are absolutely involved with that dialogue at this point and exploring a variety of different ways that we may be able to execute an election. I really don't know at this point that there's a lot more to say about it other than it's forced us obviously to think outside of the box and to really look at ways that we may be able to afford the membership, the voting members, the opportunity to exercise their right to vote while at the same time keeping them safe. So much of that is being explored at this point. We don't have a specific protocol in place as of yet, but we're certainly thinking about it.
Well, in response to that question, Past Master Jack, and I will say this, it's an unfortunate thing for Georgia because, as most of you know, that our 150th Grand Session was on the hills come June of next month. But due to this pandemic, again, made another tough decision to cancel our Grand Session for 2020. And as it relates to our 150th anniversary for the sole purpose of protecting our membership, as it related to that. But as it relates from a Grand Lodge standpoint, I did have to exercise the Constitution that I've been obligated to adhere to put forth that all of our officers are remaining the same, elected, that is, on the Grand Lodge level, on both sides of the aisles, meaning the sisters and the brothers, until we reach Grand Session again in 2021. Now, however, as it relates to our local lodges and chapters, fortunately, we still have 6 to 7 months to put forth a contingency plan in the need of that, because in the jurisdiction of Georgia, our annual elections on the local level take place in December. And so we still have to touch the summer and fall and then transition as we begin to in the winter to see what is happening, to see how new protocols are being put into place. Because as you know, right now, they're saying a gathering of only 10, no more than 10 as it relates right now, but a lot can change over the next 6 months. So I'm not going to be premature and start throwing things out right now to alarm the jurisdiction of Georgia on how we're going to handle this situation when that time comes. Again, as I said earlier, we're going to pay attention to the data, watch what's happening, and naturally consult with the leadership team, our executive board, to decide what's the best route to go for this jurisdiction as we get into December, if we're still dealing with a lot of what we're dealing with right now. Fortunately, as we can see across the country, these states are beginning to roll out opening businesses again slowly. So again, a lot can happen as it relates to that and us physically meeting, and more especially having elections come December. A lot can happen over the next 6 months to where it could possibly happen, but decision will be made as we get closer to it, as more information comes in as it relates to it in Georgia.
Thank you for that. We have another question from Sister Darnisha Pickett from the great state of Tennessee, and she's also founder of the Labyrinth podcast. So for all those viewers out there, if you haven't listened to the Labyrinth podcast, go on her page, go to the Prince Authentic, go somewhere, type it in, Google it, whatever you gotta do. Check out some of her episodes; they are amazing. And just I believe it was yesterday, or maybe the day before yesterday, the Grand Worthy Patron for Georgia was on an episode. But she asked, are the Grand Lodge and Grand Chapter partnering on these great initiatives that have been mentioned by these two great jurisdictions?
To Sister Picker's question, past master Gillum, as I stated earlier, I'm big on the membership. And if you paid attention to what I initiated before we jumped into dialogue, I gave respect to our grand worthy matron, Sister Deidre Park Wilson. I believe in unity, and anyone in the jurisdiction of Georgia can tell you that when I do speak, I speak as the Grand Master for the jurisdiction of Georgia, as the conservator. But I do recognize and understand that our Eastern Stars are just as strong as the backbone in our jurisdiction as well as the brothers. So anything we do from a Grand Lodge standpoint, as I've told people, when they hear me speak the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, I am speaking about every member in the jurisdiction, everybody in the jurisdiction, every concordant body in the jurisdiction, our Prince Hall Grand Chapter, our York Rite bodies, Scottish Rite as a whole, and even in my book, even with the shrine. Because as a great friend of mine, past Grandmaster Bruce James would always say, we can have on different color hats at any given day, but we're all still the same people in these organizations at the end of the day. So in Georgia, we don't exclude, we include. And so when we do something as a whole in Prince Hall Masonry in Georgia, that includes our grand chapter from the OES side point, again, our York Rite houses, and even the shrine, because we're dealing with the same people. Because at the end of the day, that's all they see in the community is what? Masons and Eastern Stars, even though we know all the other houses do exist, but I'm just speaking from what I know and what I've seen. But it's a collective unit across the board. So for the jurisdiction of Georgia, when you hear the words most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge being spoken, it's a collective body, it's a collective unit to express to the masses, because we all know how it goes when you start dropping names and you're going to forget somebody, and that somebody's going to feel left out. So when it comes to Georgia, when you hear most worship Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, just know it's a unified family. It's one family, Georgia strong, when it comes down to Georgia.
Absolutely, most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio and Amaranth Grand Chapter are absolutely operating in concert with one another. As far as the projects and the community service that's being done by many of our subordinate lodges, as I shared a bit earlier, in many of those instances, if not most, the lodges are working collaboratively with the Eastern Star chapters. Another case in point, don't know if I mentioned this, and if so, I don't want to be repetitive, but it bears repeating. In our first Masonic district and our sixth OES district, which comprises most of the Cincinnati area, we have the lodges and the chapters coming together on the 6th of June to do a blood drive that will address the great need through the Red Cross and other entities like that for restocking the plasma that's available throughout the pandemic. All the Eastern Star chapters, all of the lodges will work together to coordinate that blood drive. It's our hope that, good Lord willing, and this pandemic is behind us, that when we celebrate Prince Hall Day in September, we're going to be working jointly with the Order of the Eastern Star to promote a statewide day of service where every Eastern Star chapter, every lodge will come together and provide some level of outreach and community service where the need is greatest. And I'm sure now, especially in light of the pandemic, the need's going to be even greater. But we're doing that collaboratively. That's been on the Trussell board from the very beginning of this administration. We're looking very much forward to continuing that effort with Amaranth Grand Chapter and all the subordinate chapters of the Order of the Eastern Star, working together as one Prince Hall family in the jurisdiction of Ohio.
All right, thank you for that, Grandmaster. Well, both Grandmasters. This has been a great episode. I think it's from the comments. It's inspired a lot of brothers and sisters out there. They know that technology is available, and that seeing that you already have examples of lodges and jurisdictions using technology to keep Masonry, Prince Hall Masonry alive. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and move into our closing comments. We'll start off with Brother Damian Jack.
Yes, sir. Well, as always, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure to be on this podcast and to present situations and things that are going on in Prince Hall Masonry. I definitely want to thank Most Worshipful Shackelford and Most Worshipful Christy for taking time out of your busy schedules to be on this podcast with us this evening and to discuss this issue. Thank you for everyone who has been listening in. Please know that even though our country is starting the reopening process, we are not out of it yet. Please continue to be safe. Please continue to follow the guidelines. Much respect to all the essential workers out there. We'll be going to work as soon as this is over. But please be safe. Take care of yourselves. And one thing that I know Brother Gillarm did not address, Most Worshipful Shackelford, if you can look into it while you're, when you're not busy. There's a particular brother, Past Master Bird, who asked a question and wanted to know if you could actually put out an edict to stop Dave Gillarm from mentioning the New York Knicks in all communications.
Absolutely.
If you can do that and make sure that's posted on your social media page, that will be greatly appreciated. But
don't do it, Most Worshipful.
We can't have a Prince Hall think tank without mentioning the Knicks. But once again, thank you so much for everything that you are doing, for being a conservator, the conservators of Prince Hall Freemasonry, for being the leaders, for being the beacons of light. Because of your leadership, we are following your example, following your footsteps, and we thank you so much for what you are doing, what you continue to do, and in the great words of Most Worshipful Shackelford, but God.
Thank you for that, Brother Jack. And for the viewers out there that heard that atrocity, whatever Damian Jack was talking about, before we started the show, I had to put up my Christmas ornament.
Right.
And Most Worshipful Christy, come to find out, is a Knicks fan too. I mean, just imagine that. No matter how much they want to suppress us, the Knicks always come out.
No doubt.
Yeah. So I guess now we'll have our parting comment from Grandmaster Christy.
Yes, sir. Let me do one thing prior to final comments. First and foremost, I thank you for the opportunity to appear as a guest on Think Tank. But I want to thank Most Worshipful Brother Shackelford on two different fronts. About a month ago or so, I reached out to my dear brother. We have a past master from Gloria Lodge number 89 in Columbus, Ohio, who he and his wife retired and relocated to just outside of the Savannah area, I believe in Midway, Georgia. And I'm not sure if it's located near Savannah or not, but currently this brother contracted the COVID-19, and unfortunately he has been on a ventilator at Savannah Memorial for some period of time. His wife, who's also a member of the Order of the Eastern Star, has been isolated from him for obvious reasons. And I reached out to Most Worshipful Shackelford and shared what had transpired and just asked that, if at all possible, that he and some of the members of the craft in the jurisdiction of Georgia would reach out to Sister Teresa Smith, just to let her know that we love her, that it's not only those of us in Ohio that are continuing to pray for her and for Brother Ken, but it also is coming directly from brothers and sisters in the state in the jurisdiction of Georgia as well. And he immediately responded back to me. Those prayers have been abundant. and it's made a difference to Sister Smith. And without a doubt, the prayers of the righteous uh, avail much. And we know that it's been impactful. And I want to thank you, sir, for being the brother that you are, first and foremost, and for availing yourself and your jurisdiction to this system, brother. And I thank you also for the legal reference that you provided as well to brothers in our jurisdiction. So God bless you and thank you very, very much. Let me also share that Right Worshipful Brother Shackelford and I are reading out of the same Bible and singing out of the same hymnal. Uh, he mentioned a little bit earlier that the jurisdiction of Georgia has sought fit to afford some relief to the craft. And ironically, I didn't mention this earlier, but likewise, the trustees of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio has also waived a significant portion of our capital tax that are paid to the Grand Lodge by our subordinate lodges. And that's proven to be a bit of a godsend for the lodges. It's allowed them greater cash flow and the whole 9 yards. But the bottom line is we're looking at what's in the best interest of continuity of the membership. So I thank you for that as well. I wanted to get that quick point in. Thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to be on with you. I want to thank most worshipful past Grand Masters, all of the elected and appointed officers of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio, the Sisters of Amaranth Grand Chapter, and all of our dedicated brothers and sisters throughout the jurisdiction of Ohio for the exemplary manner in which they have worked to keep the banner of Prince Hall Masonry high throughout the jurisdiction of Ohio, to keep the bonds of brotherly love and friendship strong, and to continue to maintain what we do in this jurisdiction. They've done an extraordinary job, and I just want to thank them personally. My final thoughts are this. Continue to stay in touch with each other, brothers. Keep each other and our families lifted up. Continue to keep the bonds of brotherly love and friendship strong and unbreakable. Just continue to let our light shine in the communities, and continue to do so in a manner that is safe. We pray that everyone stays well and that God's grace and His mercy and His hand of protection will be on us all. God bless you all and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for that, Most Worshipful Christie. And finally, Most Worshipful Grandmaster Shackelford, Sr.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Again, to Most Worshipful Christie, thank you for those kind words. But my good brother, I'm just trying to do his will as he uses me in this capacity to be able to serve the masses, to give them, to do whatever I possibly can in the short time space that I have to do it with. But I'm absolutely touched that it made an impact on Sister Smith and her family and your jurisdiction. Because I do remember when you reached out and I responded back to you promptly, just to show you that love.
Yes, sir.
That I have for you and your jurisdiction and our brothers and sisters across the board. It's just the humane thing to do as human beings in that aspect. So salute to you again on that particular piece of it, sir. In my closing remarks, I do want to again acknowledge the leadership in the jurisdiction of Georgia and our brothers and sisters. Our grand worthy matron, Sister Deidre Park Wilson, who works very close with me with moving the jurisdiction. So, Grand Matron, if you're watching, salute to you for what you're doing and supporting this jurisdiction and showing the unification that we desire and show in Georgia. So that's a blessing in itself. Of course, to the elected line for the jurisdiction of Georgia, as I briefly mentioned earlier, our Deputy Grand Master Primus C. James, our Grand Senior Warden Jonathan White, and our Grand Junior Warden Duran Canty, for their support, their continued support, what we're doing in Georgia, and their collective effort and supporting me on the decisions that I'm making for the jurisdiction of Georgia. And our past grandmasters also, they don't always get a lot of shine and light on them, but I do want to acknowledge our past grandmasters in the jurisdiction of Georgia for being these support pillars in our jurisdiction, more especially with me as I serve as most worshipful Grand Master in that aspect. Uh, to Past Master Jack, to you, Past Master Gillon, the Prince Hall Think Tank Committee, salute to you all. You all have been blazing the trails. I think about 10 plus years now and running with what you guys are doing. For some of us old school Masons, if those can remember, this is kind of like the upgrade, if you will, from Blue Light on the Yahoo groups back in the day. So those who've been around for a minute, you know what I'm talking about. And again, to see, as we talked about technology, this is where it's at right now. Look at you all. You took what we had in Blue Light, from keystrokes to virtual videos and seminars of this nature, going across the nation and moving just that fast. So my hat is off to you two gentlemen and the rest of the team that make the Prince Hall Think Tank what it is today. And I wish you nothing but great success in your future endeavors as you continue to move forward with what you're doing in that aspect. Now, I will be remiss, and I know a lot of sisters are probably watching us right now and across the board. And we know there's a very, very special weekend coming up in a few short days. So I do want to say, on behalf of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, to all the mothers out there, I wish you a very, very happy Mother's Day. In light of what's going on, make the best of it. Make the best of it. It is your day. It is your weekend for some. Y'all know how some of those mothers are. Some of them may take the whole month, but then again, the weekend. But I do wish you a happy Mother's Day across the board, but more especially to those mothers in the jurisdiction of Georgia as they prepare to enjoy their special day, Mother's Day. And again, to all of your fans, Damien and Dave, to the Prince Hall Think Tank, those that took the time to jump in and view this tonight and ask the questions that they asked, salute to you all as well, because you could have been doing some other things with your time, but you took the time to come and see what Prince Hall Masonry is doing and using this outlet to get out to the masses to see what we're doing in that aspect. So salute to you all in that capacity, and just keep everyone lifted in prayer, because we all need it. You never know what an individual is going through, especially now with this quarantine time and the social distancing. So reach out to those who you would least expect to reach out to, because you just never know, that text message or that phone call uh, would change the course of their day dramatically. You just have no idea how much it'll, even if it's just a second or two, it will make a difference in that person's life. And to say something that Brother Jack has echoed a couple of times during this episode, and as I always leave it with the jurisdiction when I give my final remarks. So to my brothers and sisters across the globe that are listening and watching this, I'm going to leave you with two words, and that is, but God. But God blesses undeniably through God's opportunities daily. So with that being said, peace to all of you. God bless each and every one of you. And once again, Dave and Damien, thank you for allowing me to participate on this Prince Hall Think Tank. Thank you.
And thank you all. I really don't have any parting comments tonight, but I do want to thank you all for thank you two Grandmasters for supporting us. And I know, speaking with half of Damien, Jack, and James, and Kathy, who couldn't be here tonight. I mean, it's one thing to have our viewers supporting us. We have all the membership all over the world, but when you have Grandmasters supporting what you do, that really means a lot. So definitely thank you all for taking your time to come out with us tonight. And to the viewers, we hope you all enjoyed tonight's show. May you see that Prince Hall Masonry is alive and well during this pandemic, and we hope that something you watch tonight inspires you on your Masonic journey. So with that said, good evening, good night, and we will see you all at the end of the month.
Thank you. God bless. Happy Mother's Day, all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.